This is the Silt versus role-playing game Family Ties, Part 7. Let's recap from last time. First of all, kick off by saying we don't have Mike, and therefore we don't have Basil today. But that's kind of okay, because the last thing we saw with Basil was down in the secret harvest altar of the grow facility and was interacting with Pickles, and I think I'm kind of liking the idea that maybe like we just don't know what happened to either of them. So we'll maybe see what happened to them next time. But speaking of our active assignments, everybody right now is currently at the Hungering Roots and working on the Hungering Roots. You all were aiming for the 8 complexity question. You have 9 clues on that right now. Gage has just snuck into the offices at the Grow facility, and so presumably there'll be an information move firing off there in a moment. Managed to sneak in with no trouble. Japheth and Zeph, Japheth blind, Zeph tending to Japheth as best as they're able, are currently maybe hiding from the cloak because a resident at the tenement was murdered by, you all know, by an agent of the Scatterich family, Gideon Marsh. Speaking of, you are currently at 6 conspiracy clues. The Scatteriches have taken the Glomes as an asset, thereby taking the floating market off of the table. So that is no longer an active assignment. So you just have 2 active assignments right now. We've discussed the Hungering Roots. You all have made no progress whatsoever on the Bowered Companion, which is the one where a sort of stray little known god of travelers is interfering with trade routes over in the Whisper Plains. And we will have a 3rd assignment introduced at the top of the play session. I do want to check in on the Custodians, however. In particular, taking a look at your conditions. Zeph, you have the Embrace of the Dusk Mother. Japheth, you have 4 conditions of various types. Basil is not with us, but does have 3 conditions. And Gage, you also have 3 conditions, 2 of which are very like kind of physical injury type conditions. You also have Corpse Dad, so that's fun. Because we think that Lucas is like dead or like some kind of undead thing. We're not totally sure. We think we found his skeleton in the compost heap. So some weird stuff going on there.
Jason, regarding custodians, and I took a new advancement, a life of service. So as
Okay.
we hit new assignments, there'll be a chance to interject a side character with me.
I remember that one. Yeah. Okay. Cool. I will definitely keep that in mind. You might have to remind me though. Fantastic. Any other questions or thoughts before we begin? Okay, well, in the middle of the cliffhangers that we're in, at some point you all would have learned about another assignment that Based is anxious for you to deal with. That assignment is called the Skyward Sprawl. The custodians have been directed by their handlers to quietly resolve a situation in the sprawling fringes of the greater Glottage conurbation. Suburbanites within a growing sphere of influence are sickening, contracting a hideous rot from clouds of gray spores spread on the wind. Their skin erupts in weeping rust and cracked concrete. That's unusual. They become obsessed by ascent, drawn to a towering building erupting like a twisted fingernail from the dead urban soil. Dreams of ease. The Marketeers thought they had done it yet again. Another magnificent high-rise tower shaped from the Slag King's sacred plans and enhanced with cutting-edge, induced godcraft, comfortable living with a hallowed manager to protect and watch over you and your family. A single prisoner was sacrificed to the structure, drowned in concrete as tradition demanded. Strangely, they died in secret without the usual ribbon cutting and photo ops. The press release coyly branded the death a patented experiment. Who has the highest insight among you?
That's Zeph.
It is Zeph. Zeph. The architect Lucien Baton vanished shortly before the building was completed. What rumors surround his disappearance?
It's rumored that the reason he disappeared is that this particular sacrifice did not go well and he had to escape some consequences that he has left un undealt with.
Thank you. I made a note. That was a decade ago. Residents were rapidly consumed, and the newborn tower saint fed ravenously. Most succumbed to the mysterious concrete rot, and a fanatical few from the privileged upper floors began to worship the tower, calling themselves the Dreamers of Ease. They proclaimed a sacred mission, great and soaring architectural growth without end. A new name was shouted from the balconies, and the skyward sprawl was born. I'm going to direct the following to all three of you. How will you call on your deity to shield you from the sprawl's rot?
I think that Zeph will just take very practical measures of bandanaing over any orifices and such, remembering all of the fungal rot in the car from next to the where we were discovering the dust mother issues. Um,
So
Gage,
you go for it. Take it, Ben.
Gage is God, both the one he proclaims to worship and the one that he actually does. They're both gods of the ground, of the earth. And so I think he is leaning on their ties to nature and what's real, not this concrete, not rust, but dirt and earth and life, and hoping that that will shield him from this unnatural infestation.
All right. And if we think of the concrete of a building as the bones of the building, the strength of it, as a follower of the Pox Martyr, I'm well aware that the material of bones can be supplanted with other things, kind of restructuring your body. And the best way to do this is to expectorate each little bit of dust. And Japheth in his overalls has one of those handkerchiefs, and he pulls it out and coughs up some rather grotesque globs from time to time, and thinks nothing of just, shaking it off once he's hacked it out. Might make him less polite company in certain circles, but it'll keep your bones clean.
Concrete rot affecting people within a radius of this ever-growing tower. Based is over it. The government's over it. They need someone to go in. That's three of you or four of you to deal with it. We have three questions and opportunities. All different versions or different ways of resolving this problem. The first is a complexity 4. Where is the hallowed corpse of the Sprawl's saint interred? Answering that successfully allows you to resolve the assignment by destroying or removing the body. The building will rapidly rot and collapse as soon as the assignment ends. The next question is a little more subtle. It's a complexity 6. Why is the sprawl growing? This will allow you to resolve the assignment by using this knowledge to control or prevent the growth. And then the most complex question involves matters on the ground. How can the schism between the sprawl and the Slag King be healed? Resolve the assignment by presenting a cogent thesis to a delegation of the Slag King's surveyor priests and the adjudicator's representatives negotiating a peace. So we have this, in this question is implied, a religious schism, a war between followers of the Slag King, the construction god, and this breakaway sect who are living in this tower. So that's complexity 8. That's for the future, though. Right now, we're at the Hungering Roots. So let's pick up with what everyone's doing right now. I think we'll start with Gage. Gage, you have free run of Haven's office here in the Grow facility. What do you do?
Gage is definitely angling to find a place for this god to be safely transplanted, but what he needs to know to do that is as much about this god as he can, as he can find. So I think he's going to be rooting through filing cabinets, or if there's a, I don't know, a open book of summoning on his desk, just try and find whatever he can.
Go ahead and make the information move with insight.
That's a 7.
Zeph and Japheth, you had described how you were basically going to go like hide in a side corridor in the breezeway, at least until you can find a better way to sneak out of the area or whatever you're going to do. I think we'll fast forward a little bit to officers of the cloak arriving on scene. They've responded to calls from people in the building. They find Patricia Morell's body, and they're starting to quickly turn it into a crime scene. They're also starting to fan out across the area. What are the two of you doing right now? Let's just have that scene with the two of you in hiding. Japheth, you can't see any of that, but you can hear it well enough to figure out what's going on.
We need
I
to make
think
sure they
Zeph,
can't see us.
well, I don't think that Zeph would have lingered very long with Japheth. This is not a situation in which your curiosity is going to get you anything but in a fuck ton of trouble. So I think I'm trying to escort this blind pox monk as quickly as possible back to the van and pull that van somewhere to the outskirts of either the town or even outside the facility, trying to find our fellow custodians.
Yeah, I think that's probably the right move. So I think this is going to be the veiled move. Because of Japheth's blindness, I'm putting you at disadvantage. It is going to be with focus.
Right.
What are you afraid is going to happen if you fail?
Then I'll have to take off running and I will be a wanted person, but they'll get Japheth.
Oh, okay, good.
Disadvantage, you say?
I do say.
Do I have any items that would help me in this regard?
Also, possibly Japheth might have items too that would be helpful.
Yeah. Is it Sarah? Is that a typo? It says shout fun and a half box of ammo. Should that
It
say
is a
shotgun?
typo, and I can't. It's a shotgun, but
Okay.
for whatever reason, that cell is locked
Oh,
because it was part of our initial character build, and I've just never
Hmm.
corrected it.
got it.
But if I do need to shout gun, I
Yeah.
can.
All right. I mean, I've got my little sword cane, kind of walking stick, if that's somehow useful.
Here's what I'll do. I will say that because I have this hymn book of laments and they've never been sung, I think instead of booking it, I'm going to do my best to imitate a pox monk myself and kind of guide us in gathering the praise and humming quietly to ourselves and muttering about what very good toxic saints we are, and hopefully cast off some suspicion.
I like it.
Flat roll with focus. That is a 10 plus 1 for 11.
Nice. What was that you were using again? The Hymn Book of Laments, or
Yes, the hymn
okay,
book of laments, by
fantastic.
humming and kind of getting Japheth and I
Hmm.
to a prayerful
Just
mood.
a textural thing as you're leading me. I feel like I've got to have my hand on you, but remember, I do have a fungal rot condition, so my kind of grotesque fingers are holding onto your forearm.
It keeps slipping on the leather of my jacket because the rot is creating a slimy texture to your flesh.
I love
I'm
it.
trying not to take it personally.
What was your die roll?
It was a 10 plus 1 is 11.
Nice. Yeah, just give me the scene of getting to the van safely. Let's just
Japheth, I don't
if you
know
want to add
any
any
of the
more. Yeah.
Japheth, I don't know any of the words. Just look precisely as hobbled as you are, and we might get out of here without the authorities digging
You're
into our shit right now.
you're gonna read from this book or sing?
I'm just whispering to you, and then I begin humming quite loudly.
Got it. Um, uh, Japheth whispers in your ear, kind of a, that's not how we do it. The words are, and then he kicks in with sort of you always call the siblings in, and so there's underlying the humming is more of like a bickering old man contradicting you, but the two together kind of sound a little religious enough to convince people who are noticing us that we actually are in prayer, even though it's a little bit more like me being like, no, it's not like that, again and again and again.
If I see a woman on the edge of the street and she makes eye contact with us, I just burst into a fit of disgusting coughing, trying to.
Oh, that's good. I've had that illness before. That's a good one.
And we make it around the town unsuspiciously to the car. And at that
Mm.
point, I just put Japheth in the passenger seat. And we're going to slowly and not suspiciously drive around town till we see someone we recognize.
Should
Yeah, that works. That's good.
should we pick up Gage soon? Is he around here? I haven't seen him for a
Well,
while.
and Basil too. You don't know Basil's missing, so yeah. Let's cut over to Gage. Gage, here's your clue. You don't find anything in the paperwork of interest, but there is, perhaps even more intriguingly, Haven has a large ritual wreath hanging on his wall. The wreath is formed of pieces of broken scythe, pieces of broken shovels, and other traditional farming equipment. It's something that would catch your eye, and it speaks to some sort of power, I suppose. But in any case, that's your clue. As you are seeing that, maybe even like a little, like kind of not entranced, not like literally, but just like kind of focusing on it, you hear Haven coming down the hall towards the office. He's like, as he's like coming down the hall, he's like, "Hey, everyone, you're all doing a really, really good job. Just want to let you know." And even though you can't see him, you can definitely hear him doing finger guns. And he's approaching the office rapidly. What do you do?
I am going to take a seat in the chair across from his desk and cross my my uninjured leg over my injured leg.
Indeed. He comes in and he startles a little bit. And he's like, "Oh, uh, hey, um, you look familiar." Probably because he just saw you with one of his bleeding employees earlier.
Oh yes, you passed me by when I was helping out an employee of yours. My name is Gage Wright. I'm here on behalf of Crispy Crackle Crunch.
Oh yeah, okay, great, great. Is this like some sort of licensing deal with Sweet Jolly Crunch Tooth? I'm very, very open to that.
That is something I would like to discuss with you, Mr. Haven. Yes.
Fantastic, fantastic. And he kind of sets down. He has like he's clearly a little bit on edge because of that conversation he just had with that representative of the Scatteriches. But he sits down across from you, and he's like, "Well, all right, yeah, hit me with it. What are you thinking? What's going on? What's the vibe?"
Well, we understand you're using a harvest god, perhaps one that isn't quite as licensed as you might like it to be.
Well, let's just say we are currently engaged in some very, very cutting edge modern worship techniques. Completely state of the art ritual implementation. Maybe not the most legal thing in the territories, but certainly among the most innovative.
Well, that definitely interests my employers very much, and perhaps there's room for a partnership.
Perhaps there is. Perhaps there is. You don't really look dressed for making a business deal.
I'll be honest, I was not expecting this to occur today, but when the opportunity arises, striking is
Um,
striking's good.
This is good. What are you hoping to accomplish here?
I'm hoping he will just spill all the beans,
Mm,
anything that could help us,
oh,
and
nice, good.
if it gets me in Sweet Jolly Crunch Tooth's good at books, that's also handy.
As he's having this conversation with you, he will stop. He will occasionally glance over at your flesh wound that you have currently from being stabbed, and also the fact that you're favoring your leg a little bit. Um, he'll say, well, let's roll the information move with focus, but at disadvantage.
That is 6.
A 6. He says, "Yeah, yeah, we can definitely get something like that going." And he stands up and he starts to circle around. He seems like he's like pacing the office, walking circles in the office. But what he's actually doing is getting into a position where he can ambush you. He has managed to grab, perhaps surreptitiously, perhaps not, but in any case, he has managed to grab what appears to be a very, um, like a really heavy, some kind of tool, like um, I don't know anything about gardening. Um, I'll just say a hammer for now. I know it's not a gardening tool, but he's managed to grab a hammer. A trowel, I guess. He's managed to grab a hammer, and he pretends like he's playing with it, in his hands. And he says, "Yeah, yeah, it's there's so many things we could talk about. I really do want to make sure that this little business we've got going here can sort of achieve mainstream status, if you know what I mean. That's something I think you might be able to help me out with, if you're here to help me out with that. I hope what you're not here to do is to, well, scope out what's really going on here and report back to the authorities."
I'm going to go ahead and mark the verse of prophecy.
Oh, really? Interesting. To bump this up to a 10.
A 7.
Oh, 7. That's right, because it was a miss. Yeah. So you get a clue at least. Um, okay, instead, I think I'll just give you a clue. He, instead of getting up, or he's still walking around in circles, he's still doing all that, but he's starting to like run off at the mouth a little bit. Kind of talking about this, talking about that, all the different things you might be doing, like different possible deals. He's the kind of person who doesn't really give you a chance to speak and say what you want or think. He sort of just goes on and on. And is um, buried in that is an interesting detail. He says, of course, well, there are we have some basic complications when it comes to the work we do here, and we would naturally want to confer with you and your people about that to make sure that, just make sure there's no trouble, that no one gets harmed or entranced or, you know, taken over by squirrely harvest gods. And as he's saying all this, he kind of he sits down, and you can see now that he's wearing colored contact lenses. And he kind of shifts one a little bit. And he says, we have special protective measures we have to take here. Some of us, those of us in the know, I guess. And it kind of goes on a little bit more. It says, all right, so yeah, let's do this. Let's let's set up a time. Let's get our people talking, and let's make this happen.
Absolutely, Mr. Haven. The protection you require wouldn't have anything to do with not limiting your exposure cycles, would it?
Oh, there's a whole manner of safety protocols. You know, gods. You gotta do what you gotta do. The tricky thing is the eyes. That's the hard bit.
Fascinating. Yes, well, and he'll reach into his pocket and pull out a card and just slide it across the table, and it is his name with the Sweet Jolly Crunch Tooth corporate logo.
Hmm.
And he'll say, "I would be pleased to speak with you about this further. Just give me a call."
Will do. Will do. Thank you very much, Mr. Wright. And at this point, if you want to leave the facility and meet up with the other two, I'm okay with that. I think you'll be able to leave with nobody bothering you.
Yes, I would like to do that. And I think as I'm walking out of the facility, once I get outside and there's no one around, once again, his limp just seems to disappear.
Hmm.
And I think he's going to kind of reach into his shirt, and you can hear what sounds like the tearing of corn husks.
Mm.
And he pulls something out from the area where he was stabbed and just looks at it like it's an apple. You can't quite see what it is, but it's fleshy and almost like cobblestone texture. And he starts eating it.
Hmm. Is this triggering a move?
It is the result of having marked the bleeding revelation and woven of wheat. I can
Oh,
clear my physical conditions by describing how they grow out from my body as fruits of the harvest
I
and
love
how I
it.
devour them.
Very, very good. I love it. That's great. You have 11 clues. That's plenty to answer this 8 complexity question if you're still aiming for that one. The question is, where can this harvest god be safely transplanted? If you answer it correctly, you get to resolve the assignment by breaking the god from its confines, allowing it to grow freely, and showing the local residents how to coexist with it. This unlocks a new move, the Mark of Quickening. Why don't we take a 10-minute break so you all can take a look at your clues and consider the possible answers here, and we'll come back and we'll discuss it. Okay, we're back. So the question is, where can this harvest god be safely transplanted? It's a complexity 8. I'm going to review the clues just so that folks watching the video know what we're talking about. So we have written on a sacrifice's scrap paper a quote, "See the 3 suns above this planet." Unusual. That's the quote, and I think it's unusual. um, there is a dog-eared farmer's almanac, the margins full of notes, which was given to Gage by Gail Van Wyck, who we have not seen in a minute. Those notes, you can kind of fill in the context of what those notes are as you need to. Faint prayer marks painted in sweeping strokes on a brick wall now sprout moss and tiny red flowers. Also, there might be a connection to the cat with those. An antique bronze sundial each hour etched with a prayer mark and trailing copper conductor wires off into various planters. A quote, "All things decay but bring forth new life." A warning sign in the facility, "Limit your exposure cycles." There is a pile of empty industrial fertilizer bags featuring a colorful illustration of the verdant mother blowing gently on a row of yawning seedling children stretching from their sleep. There's a clue from the scriptorium over and over, "The garden must feed." A vivid glowing rainbow tree, uh, which was sort of a mural inside the building. Haven has a large ritual wreath made of broken scythes, shovels, and other farm equipment. And then Haven wears colored contact lenses. It was strongly implied that those are needed for protection. So, a lot of clues. Very. I'm curious how you're going to use these to answer this question of how can the harvest god safely be transplanted. I question whether you can use all these clues. Maybe some of them are for other questions, but are more appropriate for other questions. Who wants to take a stab at this? Or are we still kind of working it out?
I had a jumping off point.
Okay.
That was basically Haven. It has been, for lack of a better phrase hydroponically growing this god
Uh,
by manufacturing all of the worship and all of the state of the art technology, presumably keeping it in this vessel that we saw.
mhm,
And that trying to keep that god contained is not going well because all they're doing is feeding it.
mm,
And there's not like the natural life cycles. So, like, if you're growing something and it grows too big for the space it's in, you get this rot
mm,
along the edges. Like, the root bound pots start to, those roots decay. So, it's this bright green god inside of kind of a slimy edge rot inside of this vessel.
mhm.
And that by hydroponically growing this god, it has the manufactured worship has basically mutated it. So now it can thrive in UV light and it's starting to take over other things to kind of build on itself
Mm,
in kind of like a composting life cycle sort of way.
mhm.
And that was where we kind of jumped from.
I mean, that all sounds really reasonable to me, but like, what? I guess like we have to return to the question though, like where can this harvest god be safely transplanted?
So the concept of moving it outside and kind of doing like a three sisters method in this harvest god needs to be kind of balanced out with nature,
Oh, I see.
and
Yeah.
that they grew it artificially, so now they need these colored contacts to protect their eyes from the UV light so the god doesn't try and corrupt them. And like it, if we brought it outside and taught the town to care for it, it might just
Oh, I
grow.
see. So basically, you have to take it out of this artificial environment
Yes.
and put it in this like more natural environment. That seems like a pretty good solution.
Yeah.
Do either of you have any thoughts on that?
Let me
Brian?
add a little more to that we talked about off camera for a second. Was a question of whether this plant needs to grow in harmony with children. That the children
Mm.
in the community are growing the plant semi-sentient, recognizes it must keep its growth in check with the growth of the children.
That's interesting because the facility was originally an orphanage, right? Or at one
Exactly,
point, yeah. Yeah, that's
and that
intriguing.
leads to this idea of a thing we didn't talk about yet is perhaps the building needs to be daylighted, meaning to rip off the roof to bring
Oh,
in a natural light to
mm.
the existing artificial lights, like the combination of those two suns, and then I don't know, are the children the other sun? Even though I know that's very
They're the
gendered.
third son. Yeah, yeah. That's intriguing. Ben, do you have any thoughts?
Um, Broadly speaking, we've kind of discussed the possibility of making this operation kind of a co-op with the backing of Sweet Jolly Crunch Tooth and
Oh,
remove Haven from the operation.
oh, interesting, interesting. That's
So
intriguing.
uh, I'm having a hard time working that with the clues, though. I think that's more just the
Yeah, I mean, I think we have a
how
lot
we
of
would.
like goals here. I mean, for the die roll though, and to answer the question, where can this harvest god be safely transplanted? It sounds like your answer is like, I mean, I think it's interesting that where it can be safely transplanted is kind of, um, it, it sounds like maybe transplanting it is just as simple as bringing it up from out of the subterranean space, keeping it though in the facility, but making the facility more natural, right? Like
And,
bringing in more natural light.
and let me add a little twist on words there. Let us say that with Haven and the wreath of the traditional farming implements, the scythes and such, that we're transplanting Haven himself out of the community to
Oh,
corporate Sweet Jolly Crunch Tooth,
that's pretty
so that the
good.
community can thrive with the
Mm.
plant being right where it was, but the building reformed.
Oh, that's intriguing. Okay, well, so let's look through these clues then. Um, what do we suppose the three sons are then in this formulation?
So two ways I think we discussed interpreting it. The first is that this could represent the three sisters method of agriculture, the three
Hmm.
sons, the three growing, uh, the ways of growing. But it could also be that we are seeing a god that has been confined to this area as if it is an entire ecosystem surrounded by three UV lights
Hmm.
on essentially a planet. It's a gaslit god.
Oh, interesting. Interesting.
And
Okay.
from there, hop down to the antique bronze sundial. I feel like that just links right into this idea that the
Where
sundial doesn't function in an artificial light. Like if you have fixed lights, the sundial is useless.
Hmm.
and they're perhaps that's how
Exposed,
they're controlling the god's cycles. They're
right?
telling the god it's this time when it's not,
Yeah,
and
Oh, that's
and
it
interesting.
just
exposed to
endlessly
daylight again, the
loops.
sundial with the copper wires becomes once again functional.
Oh, that's intriguing. That's really intriguing. Okay. I'm feeling this. What kind of information might be included in that almanac that Gail gave you? That feels really relevant because Gail was like probably the character closest to the plants and to the god, right?
There might be information in there Gale has been tracking to as a method to control the god, but secretly she's also been, or inadvertently, she's been keeping track of how to feed this god and take
Mm,
care of it naturally.
mm,
And so all the things that she has written as don't do's are what we need to do.
mm. Got it. Very interesting. Okay, so that's intriguing. Um, okay, okay. I'm getting into this. Um, what was the Haven connection with the wreath again? Just the idea of getting him
We
out of
had,
there.
well, we had talked about how it could be part of the containment ritual,
Hmm.
because if you're growing a god hydroponically, the last thing you need are broken scythes and shovels and farm equipment.
Hmm.
So that somehow they're breaking these implements in order to contain this harvest god instead of growing it outside in nature.
Oh, that's intriguing. Okay.
It could be part of a ritual as well, that because a farmer doesn't contain a god, they work with a harvest god to
Mm,
bring life and then cycle it. So by breaking that link of symbiosis, it's saying, no, you're
your
ours.
hours. Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. So that just further like kind of emphasizes we got to get Haven out of here, essentially, right? That's intriguing. Okay, so I'm seeing four clues here that work pretty well with this idea of how you have to like reimagine this situation with this harvest god. Um, what about other clues might feed into this answer?
Well, the colored contact lenses fits the artificial natural light thing we've been talking about. It seems like
Tell me more about that.
that if the workers are exposed for too long to the artificial lights, that this is somehow impacting their own
Mm.
visual health.
Oh, interesting. Yeah,
And it may
I'm.
This
not
god
be
raised
just
in
that
artificial
it's,
light is trying to use it to inhabit other people.
Well, that's what I was
yeah,
wondering. Like, because we've seen that because we've seen people get taken over by this thing, right? Like,
if the artificial light is powered, or at least partially channeling the constant kind of drip feed sacrifice, maybe too much exposure does make you susceptible to the god's influence, and so the warning and the contact
yeah,
lenses are in place. But if things were in a more natural state, that wouldn't be a
yeah,
concern.
yeah. I'm into that. That's really, really good. Um, okay, we're getting there. We're getting there. Six clues so far. Um, so I'm not sure about these prayer marks and the moss and the red flowers. I'm not sure what the significance of that is. We may have to explain that away rather than incorporate. But in any case, because that was found in the tenement building. Um,
I've got a question about that because it's been a while since that one was discovered. The
yeah.
cat Pickles was leaving footprints where these grew. Is that
Well,
correct?
that was sort of like kind of. We didn't really. We kind of that was sort of implied. We don't know for sure, but I'm okay with it if that's what we think was happening. Um,
Is it possible that Pickles, because Pickles, as far as we know, may be a deity, a god,
right.
that Pickles has been, as a kind of a stray cat or whatever, exploring into the warehouse, coming back out, leaving these footprints that are showing like an expansion to the community
I
or
mean,
to the.
yeah. I mean that's almost certainly what's going on if we think Pickles is involved with it. But I'm just not sure how it helps answer the question. So
Well, then are there prayer marks, the local community people seeing these footprints and being like, "Oh my God, the thing's expanding. Let's try and block it."
mm, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Maybe the prayer marks and the all things decay but bring forth new life, maybe this is the god trying to get out from containment. It wants to. We know that the tenement buildings are rotting and falling apart. Maybe part of its new home, part of the new symbiosis will be being that structure, repairing it, growing into it to bring new life to it. And so the prayer marks are its influence perhaps being spread by Pickles because it knows where it can grow.
When Pickles is a god of like multiple lives, right? Which I think is intriguing. Like that feels relevant. Like if we think that Pickles is a deity, it's a deity called Nine Lives, and it's a deity. And what we know about this deity up to this point is that essentially, following this deity is an acceptance of like sometimes you die but you come back, right? You get to come back 8 times essentially, right? That's the faith of the Nine Lives. And so how might that connect to what's going on with the facility? I think that feels really relevant.
Perhaps it is a god of its own, but it's kind of an offshoot of the harvest god, because what is harvest if not death and regrowth? There's always a limit. The ground will no longer support it, but yeah, maybe this. So there is an affinity between Pickles and this god.
Oh, interesting, interesting. So like the Nine Lives is an offshoot of this harvest god, or is it possibly the other way around? I don't know, but well, no, I think the Verdant Mother. I think the harvest god's probably an offshoot of the Verdant Mother, right? But
So
Either way,
if
even if
it's
it's not,
yeah,
if it's
oh,
not directly an offshoot, there could be an affinity there. The Nine Lives wants to help the other god.
yeah,
if
that's
the idea
intriguing.
is that we want to create like reinforce that like life cycle process in order for it to grow naturally, it will need to like be cut back and trimmed, and then worship begins anew again.
Mm,
And by force feeding this god a consistent diet of worship, it has kind of removed the natural cycle of it all. So that like death and rebirth, reinvigorating that process allows the god to be growing out in amongst the public safely.
hmm
So if we're talking about uh, Pickles being either a manifestation of that death and rebirth, or if it's just that the god itself is trying to expand so it can die back, like it's just tired at growing and growing and growing
Oh,
constantly,
yeah.
and it's trying to like find those cycles again. I don't
Yeah,
know.
that's intriguing. Well, and I think also the presence of Nine Lives also speaks to the quote, "All things decay but bring forth new life." Like this feels like a connection, right? It feels like there's really
Mm.
something going on here. We have to just figure out like how if you're aiming for this complexity 8 question, you have to like determine this. It really has to be focused on like how is that going to help with the transplanting of the god, right? So in this case, the question is how do we get Nine Lives? Like, what is the connection between Nine Lives? What does Nine Lives do here that helps with all of this process? Nine Lives seems very interested in all of you, right? So I think that there's this. I don't think it's. I think Nine Lives is onto something. It can't really communicate because with you directly in that way because it's a god. They can't speak, but like, and not in a way that you can understand. So it might be on you all to figure out the connection there, right?
So Nine Lives has been present with Lucas quite often.
Hmm.
Uh, this used to be an orphanage. Is this
Good.
a cat who's kind of an intermediary between children?
I'm not sure, but we do know that I wonder if that's just happenstance. I'm not sure like there might be a connection between children and this harvest god. There might be a connection between Nine Lives and the harvest god. I'm not sure what their connection between the children and Nine Lives is, except that kids like cats, you know. And Lucas, we think Lucas is also like a beneficiary of Nine Lives' power, right?
Well, let me add a little more then. So this used to be an orphanage. What
Did
if
it used to be a
Nine
church,
Lives?
or it used to be it was a church before that of some god, which we never really established. So
Right. So
yeah.
what if Nine Lives is the original sort of parish church cat
Hmm.
who was adopted by the orphanage, orphaned cat, And then as the orphanage became a warehouse grow facility, the cat was still there but became imbued with a deified power at some point.
Oh, that's intriguing. Yeah, yeah. Right. Well, let's accept that
Correct.
we can accept that nine lives is a part of this, but like how does nine lives help with the transplanting of the god?
If we're going with the idea of essentially the god remains here and we're ripping open the building to let it grow in the community, this is the fourth iteration for that building, I believe. So the building has a new life
Oh,
along
that's
with the dead.
interesting. Oh, that's an interesting angle. Huh.
I have
Okay.
I have a different pitch. What if this is Nine Lives, Ninth Live, and this is the point that it really wants to invest its last efforts to get this free this god that it's seen trapped in this building that it's haunted and or
Yeah.
possessed for so many years.
Mm. Intriguing. Intriguing.
If nine lives can somehow be part of this harvest god's cycle, it will never truly die.
Yeah, that's intriguing too. Like it's an effort by nine lives to have infinite lives or to change. Are we having a change in philosophy here? It's no longer with the nine lives, it's the potential for forever life. Cyclical based, death and rebirth. Intriguing, intriguing. Hmm.
So
Well,
Zeph has a whole bunch of bodies that they have to deal with in the
indeed.
compost of this place. And I am trying to remember the connection there was to Lucas. But am I correctly remembering that these were children's skeletons? They were
At
small
least
bones?
Lucas was the one. We
Mm-hmm.
don't know about the other skeletons necessarily. We did find Lucas's skeleton, though, what we believe is Lucas's skeleton.
So if we're talking again about death and rebirth
Mm,
and nine lives,
mm,
if Lucas is dead and this cat, nine lives, this power, it has to either wake the dead
mm,
or somehow communicate with
mm,
the dead. That seems like an interesting connection we could pull from.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I definitely think there's something here. So, okay. So your answer, just to bring it back to your answer is you're not transplanting it so much as you are refashioning the building that it's in, right? This would be the fourth iteration of this building, which I think is intriguing. Um, it, yeah, okay. So, okay. The Three Sons makes sense to me. The Almanac with like the sort of like saying what not to do makes sense to me. That's all really good. The bronze sundial. Um, Limiting your exposure cycles and the contact lenses are just like kind of I think just they're kind of just explained away as like what's going to happen like or like what the danger is of this artificial situation they've created so you must get a more natural grow situation going on here. I love all that. um if we think that nine lives is connected to the solution here, all things decay but bring forth new life makes perfect sense, right? um as does maybe just the general like the little like nine lives sort of okamiing away his way through the tenement building causing flowers to grow wherever he lands is just further like showing the connection between the two gods. And so you're this, it's all working. So nine lives I think is really really important to this, right? Like is really important to whatever you have to get done here. That's eight clues. The four remaining clues or no, three remaining clues are um, the verdant mother gently blowing on a row of yawning seedling children stretching from their sleep. That could be a connection with the original function of the building. I'm not sure. Also, the vivid glowing rainbow tree, which was something that was there back when there were kids here, and um, and then the garden must feed from the scriptorium over and over and over again. Scriptorium was very, very, very insistent on this point.
I've got a couple thoughts on those. With the
Mm,
scriptorium, that was from Basil's Phantasmagoria Scriptoria, I think is the name of the move. Yeah.
it is indeed. Yeah.
So in Basil, what do you want to say? Sort of bringing the waxen scrivener to this place to create the scriptorium. this god intersected with the presence of the other one, and the kind of autonomic response is the repetition of the garden must feed. It's the building calling out what it needs.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I like that. That's good. I'm super
And
into that.
then for the vivid glowing rainbow tree, this is definitely me as photography teacher who teaches children speaking, thinking about this. But when you see a rainbow, you're seeing the arc, but it is actually a full circle. So let's think
Mm-hmm.
circle of life here for a moment.
Mm.
And if this was once an orphanage, that perhaps there was a moment as Gage was exiting Haven's office, maybe behind a door barely glimpsed, there was an old mural of the school building, the warehouse now,
Mm.
with a little rainbow running around it, but that rainbow tucks back below the earth, like a full circle, digging into this idea of seeds growing, children raising up, that the building has known for a long time what it needed to be.
So the building knows its function. Oh, that's pretty good. It's almost like the building itself is its own kind of like symbiotic divinity of some sort. That's really intriguing, and that settles those two clues because it brings in the kids. So that's great because that lines up with your answer, which is the building is key to what we have to do here. Nine lives is key to what we have to do here. Getting rid of Haven is key to what we have to do here, and furthermore, repurposing the building to to be a more natural growing situation.
And it makes Gage sliding a business card across to Haven really potent.
Yeah, this is really interesting. Well, let's just see if you're right. I mean, I think you've done a good job with the clues. We got there. They're complex clues, so but I think we got there. Who wants to roll +3?
Ben, I feel like you've been pursuing this far more than Sarah and I have. Do you want to roll?
Sure. 3 is 10.
10. Nice. Full success. Full success. I will let you accomplish this relatively straightforwardly. Resolve the assignment by breaking the god from its confines, allowing it to grow freely, and showing the local residents how to coexist with it. I think what this really just boils down to is I don't think the people who work there, I don't think they particularly care what happens. I think Haven is the one who cares what happens, right? And we know from the one clue that you found, like Haven, like venerating these broken farm tools. He's got to go, right? He stands against the natural order here that this harvest god needs, that this building wants, that Nine Lives wants. And so that's going to be the trick here. What is your plan then to get rid of him, to get him out of the picture?
Gage can get him a new job.
Okay, I'm into this. Would this be like subterfuge, or do you actually have the connection to make this happen?
Get him into research and development for Sweet Jolly Crunch Tooth.
I think Sweet Jolly Crunch Tooth would be very interested in his methods and the things that he has perfected. So
see, that's
I think
the
it could
thing.
easily.
That's the thing. We're treating Haven like the bad guy here, but actually y'all are the bad guys, and Sweet Jolly Crunch Tooth is the bad guy, and this makes sense to me that Sweet Jolly Crunch Tooth would be like, like that Faith would be really intrigued by what you're doing. We're really interested in these new grow techniques and these new innovative approaches. They don't give a shit what happens to this little rinky-dink harvest god. Like, who cares? They've got harvest gods coming out of their ears. I'm into it. I think this is really good. So I think what I want to do here is this is good. First things first. Does anybody have any unresolved verses that they need to narrate at this point? No. Okay.
I do.
You do? Okay, great. If you want to do that now, you can, or we can wait for a little bit. I'll leave it up to you.
I can do it now. It's not very long.
Mm-hmm.
So it is the Bleeding Revelation, which is to narrate a flashback to when my elders marked and prepared me as a secret vessel of the harvest. And it also unlocks an additional end of session question for me, which I wish I could have marked before this, because that could have made solving this problem much more interesting. And that is, did I make a sacrifice to feed the crops? But we see Gage sitting in the field on a wooden stool. He is naked and his body is covered in tiny rivulets of blood stemming from his left front and back. His face is pale and strained, his eyes are closed, and we see his mother hunched behind him. She is gently cutting a small line into the skin of his back, and from her arm hangs a woven basket full of corn seeds. She slips a seed under his skin and says, "Almost done for today, sweetheart." Brows furrowed in concentration. "He's so proud of you. We all are." And as the camera pans out, we see that while she's working on his left side, his right side is bumpy, almost scaled. I picture it kind of like Killmonger from Black Panther.
Oh, that's
and
good.
It's all little seeds.
Ooh, love it. Okay. Why don't we take a really short break, like 3 minutes, just to collect our thoughts. What I want to do when we come back is I just want to like project forward into the future a little bit as the facility is changed and repurposed. The harvest god is brought forth from below and allowed to grow naturally in the sun. And also the connection between Nine Lives and kids. I'm curious to see those details as well. We'll handle it in a sort of round of narrations, and then that'll be our session for today. We'll end a little early because I don't want to get too far ahead without Mike. So,
Give me a quick thing before we go. On the character sheet where we've unlocked the mark of quickening, but how do I get to that? Like, where do I find that in the character keeper?
well, I haven't noted it anywhere yet, but
Got it. Okay.
it'll eventually end up in. If you scroll down, there's like moves, like on the left-hand side of the phase selector, where the phase selector is. If you scroll all the way down, you'll see one for the Dusk Mother's Embrace, and then I think there's going to be one. We'll eventually have one there for the Mark of the Quick.
Got it.
So
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. Let's take a 3 minute break just to think about what your little portion of the narration is, and then we'll come back and do that. Okay, so we're going to project forward into the future a little bit as we see your efforts to repurpose this grow facility. I like to imagine this is something that like you all maybe like check in on periodically and let the local community kind of like do the heavy lifting on it or whatever. But whoever wants to start, please do.
Quite simply, Zeph spends several days and weeks shoveling compost into the building. The factory floor now covered in fresh dirt. And you'll see as they're digging away, they're also slowly collecting this knuckle bone and that brushing the mushrooms off of the, collarbone of this and gathering them and stacking them in a corner. When the kids come around and ask what they're doing, Zeph is not really engaging at all. The kids will point, and Zeph just starts mumbling to themselves in order to be off-putting to the locals, because they do not want to talk about what they're doing for their god right now. I am just shoveling shit.
Does that also satisfy what the Cairn Maiden wanted?
It does. I will be able to unmark a box of fate once I gather all of the bones from this pile. But while I do it, I'm just muttering about how the gods are a disease of convenience for those who are just too stupid to invent anything. And the spark of humanity's creative spark is just now this bonfire of worship, and we're scrabbling over each other to throw ourselves on the fire and just continuing.
I love it. You can unmark fate. That's good.
Thank you.
Whoever wants to continue, please do.
Let me do the inverse for a moment, where Zeph is sort of pushing the community away a little bit, doing this service. Japheth, still blind, is sort of sitting there with a little cane kind of between his legs and offering commentary on what sounds like all the hard work happening around him. And he says, as the building is opened up, the sunlight is coming down on him. He says, the sun's good on these old bones. It's so good to hear the children working and playing again. It's just delightful to see a community come together like this and really rebound and grow in new ways. Uh, his new advancement, the new move that he picked up, the name of it is A Life of Service. Uh, you hear some footsteps on the gravel, and somebody says, "Are you that guy from the Riverside Pier Service back at the floating market?" He says, "Oh, well, yeah, that was me." And move on.
Gage.
Gage is also at this community for, well, as long as Zeph is, I imagine he's helping with the reorganization. He's trying to make sure everything's off to a good start. And the whole time he is followed dutifully by Lucas, who is eager to help, eager to just be around Gage. And I think while there's no outward expression of enjoying Lucas's company, he is certainly becoming less visibly irritated by the child. And as he goes on, he's trying to show Lucas things here and there about how to nurture new life, how to bring this cycle back to nature, how to get things growing, how to take care of them. And at the end of their time here at the community, Gage gets into the van behind the wheel. I don't know if anyone has noticed that his injuries have just disappeared, but he gets into the van and he turns as the passenger side door opens and Lucas slides in to the seat and pulls the seatbelt on. He's got a little backpack. He's wearing a coat that's a few sizes too big. And he just smiles at Gage. And Gage is quiet for a minute. And he just goes, well, shit.
Fantastic. I love it. You all do get a brand new move. It's called the Mark of Quickening. When you write a prayer mark to invoke the cycles of birth and decay within living matter, describe what the mark looks like, and then your next associated roll is made with vitality. So that is your new move that everybody has access to, a new prayer mark. And we're going to go to the end of session, collect rewards because an assignment was resolved. I will read those out. They are a small stitch root seedling used for splicing and stabilization of other plants will grow and become affixed to anything it is planted near. A jar of nutrient-rich compost water able to quicken growing things or neutralize toxins. A machete, grip-wrapped in salvaged leather cord, hand-etched with the words sow on one side and reap on the other. Midnight Reverie, a potent blend of loose-leaf psychotropic tea. Or there are two available of a memento from the investigation. Ask another custodian to describe it. Who wants what? A lot of good stuff here.
Yeah. I think Gage would want the machete.
Gabriel writes the best rewards. Like Gabriel is the best reward writer.
He wants
definitely.
a lot of fun.
These are all, even the word stitch root, just that word
so
alone.
good.
I'm like,
Yeah.
I want a stitch root. I don't even know what it does. I want it.
So the machete
Zeph
for
would
Gage.
be willing to pass on the machete if they can have the psychedelic tea, which I may or may not share with Basil when he comes back.
We'll, of course, let Basil choose one when Mike gets back.
Yeah. Does anybody have a good idea for a memento?
9 lives.
I've got
you
one.
have a cat following you around.
But it's actually a different cat.
Just some random cat. You call it 9 lives.
What were you going to say, Jason?
Oh, I was going to say you have the keys to Patricia Morell's apartment. That's the lady who was murdered by.
Yeah, that's interesting.
She was a follower of an offshoot sect called the 10th Life.
Oh, that's right. She was the 10th life. Thank you. I forgot that part.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that'll be fun. I'll take the keys.
Fantastic. End of session. You all completed an assignment, so everybody gets credit for that. You also engaged with a god, so everybody gets credit for that one as well. Zeph, did you do the monologue?
I was muttering about tossing bodies on
I
a
know,
fire.
yeah, you caught that. Yeah, I caught that at the end. That was good. Did you struggle with your personal faith?
I did the thing, but I wasn't happy about it.
Very well. So you have got a clean sweep today. It's good. Japheth, did you go out of your way to connect with the local community?
About all I did was I sat on a sunny patio and talked about how great it was to see the community come together. That
Yeah,
was
no, I'm
fun.
into it. I mean, I think the way you described your approach to the resolution in opposition to Zeph's, I think makes it fit. Um, did you deliver the monologue?
I don't think so.
Basil will get a bit here. I will give Basil credit for the completing an assignment one, I think. Gage, did you do the monologue?
I did not.
Did you engage with the local community?
I think so, yes.
No. Fantastic. And do we have any moves that resolve at end of session? Very well. Quick session today. Quick session, kind of setting up what's essentially the remainder of the campaign, and a fresh start. But let's do stars and wishes nonetheless. Stars. I actually really quite enjoyed answer a question today. It was a hard, challenging answer a question, and I was really determined to like get to the right answer and not gloss over anything. But we got there, and I think it was really good. And I like the way that like we were able to explain like the connections of like children and this idea of multiple lives and rebirth and the purpose of the facility and its like changing purpose. I thought that was all really good, and it made that resolution feel really textured and deep in a way that I found quite enjoyable. Also really love just the what you all described at the end there, like your actual like implementation of the solution was really it was really personal to each of you, and it was really fun to see. And so yeah, stars for that as well.
I can go. I also want to point out that I took as my advance adding a follower. I'm taking Lucas.
Nice. I love it.
Um, yeah, stars. This session is good. It was punchy. I liked the solution that we came up with and how we kind of returned power to the people without telling them that we are also just giving it to a different god. Um, and stars. I really enjoyed the idea of Zeph walking around humming like Snow White. I don't know why that just tickled me. Brian, Japheth is so gross. I love it so much. But your description of how to deal with the dust from the Skyward Sprawl is just expectorating. Not a word I expected to hear in the context of things today, but it was perfect. Yeah, I'm glad that Zeph got to deal with some of the debts owed to the Karen Maiden, and I am looking forward to more. I'm so over your shit, Karen Maiden, from Zeph.
Yeah, star for working that like resolving the fate issue with the Karen Maiden into that. That was really great. Also, star for the Killmonger seed back. That was really gross and cool. Yeah.
I second that star. That was definitely on my list, along with it was my first star of the day was just Ben. You Gage was looking for an open book of summoning, just like where are the easy god obvious answers.
Yeah.
That is what I'm looking for, and it was an early star and one I
A
enjoyed.
book that says how to resolve this assignment.
Yes, yes. I also liked. I guess it's kind of a wish because it didn't actually happen, but Haven just Jason, your choice to have one of the side characters just casually playing with a hammer doesn't really mean anything. Again, Japheth's oh boy, Brian, you just give me the ick and in the best way possible. Like I know that I was thinking about the sloughing of your flesh today more than I'd like to, but it was pitch perfect for what we're doing here. I have wishes. I mean, Zeph's not going to hate on the Care Maiden forever. There's got to be resolution to this arc.
Oh, inevitably
But
you don't, right? Like
yeah,
every character comes back to their god in this,
yep.
right?
But I am trying to set myself up for a full swing of that pendulum. And so it's been really fun to just be over it. It's so very angsty, death, goth teenager obsession, and there's a lot of that. I'm looking forward to getting into the gross and other reasons that Zeph has for motivation. And yeah, just looking forward to having our psychedelic Basil boy back, just lick everything for us to find some clues.
It occurs to me, this was not intentional, but it occurs to me that I thought it's as I think on it, it's really interesting that Haven like was sort of like idolizing these broken gardening tools, but using a hammer, which is a carpenter's tool. And there's this idea almost that like Haven is a Haven is actually a builder, not a grower, not a gardener, right? Which I think is really interesting. Yeah.
Will we see Haven again at the Skyward Sprawl?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, like yeah, he's. I mean, Haven. I feel like Haven goes wherever the action is, right? So yeah.
I'll throw in some stars here. Ben, as always, your narrated verses are amazing. You're outdoing us all with the thought you're putting into those. I'm really impressed by how they read. I kind of want to. I don't know. I'm waiting for the chapbook of like Gage, sort of a diary of Gage's own thoughts. Um, I know Gabriel's not here, but Gabriel wrote those end of session rewards, and every one of them was amazing. Like I mentioned, just the word stitch root by itself conjures enough imagery that I didn't need any more than that. It was incredible. Um, a couple other thoughts. I like that Ben, you said I'm here on behalf of Crispy Crockle Crunch, and I like how that played into our resolution quite a bit, and that leads to a wish of sorts. I hope there's a stinger scene of Haven arriving at the research and development branch of Sweet Jolly Crunch Tooth and something horrible that happens. Jason, you had said we could hear Haven doing finger guns even though we couldn't see him. That's incredible. Just the the audio of a silent gesture is amazing. And then what else did I have there? Sarah had talked about this is sort of partially off camera, but the sense of the three sisters leading to our overarching resolution, I thought worked really, really well. Did I have anything else? Um, oh, now that Gage has this sort of fruits of the flesh thing, knowing Basil's predilection for eating things, I'm curious to see what happens when Basil realizes that you can shed edible substance from your own body.
Yum.
Yep.
All right. I love it. Any other stars and wishes? Okay, well, in that case, short and sweet today. Let's wave goodbye to folks watching the video. Bye.